Sitting here in the home studio with Balint Marco,
Yep.
and I'm Peter Hunter, and we're going to have a book club about self-reliance, an essay from 1841 by Ralph Waldo Emerson, the teacher of Thoreau, who wrote Walden, Life in the Forest, for 2 years, a book many people know. But less people know Ralph Waldo Emerson, and because both of us love this essay, we're going to talk about it and have a conversation. And before we started recording, you said that you like the philosophy of transcendentalism, which is Ralph Waldo's kind of ism, if you could say, his philosophy ism. And I don't know, do you want to introduce the essay and your relationship to transcendentalism?
Sure. Well, I have a very intimate relationship with this whole essay because I spent 4 months about 2 years ago to completely translate it to Hungarian, because I couldn't find a complete translation of it, and I was
to your native language.
For my native language, yeah.
Hungarian, yeah.
So I went through it like hundreds of times to basically make sense of what these sentences say in a different language.
Yeah, and it's to be said, it's written in Old English. At least the original
Yes.
is like a very classy Old English, and the essay is 23 pages long, kind of with a small font. So that's something to translate that long of a text. I don't think I ever did that.
Yeah, it was my first go at it, and it turned out pretty good. After I finished, I found a Hungarian dude who actually translated the same essay in the early 1900s, I think. And I do think I did a better job actually, because as I seen, he every time he got to a point where he couldn't make sense of it, he just left it out. So there are things where I felt like I could make sense of in Hungarian and in general. Whoever this guy was couldn't, and he just leave it out. So that gave me a lot of satisfaction by doing this. It was a good trip.
I could imagine there was no better way to get to know a text intimately than to translate it, and to translate it to your own native tongue.
Exactly, that's
so that's quite inspiring way into this, I would say, that you've had that relationship with it. Me, I've read it 2 or 3 times, and each time I've noticed something new and been like very inspired. Like I get motivated, I get energized by reading this.
Exactly.
And the self-reliance is the title, and it's about this strong, determined stance to be who you are, to be authentic.
It is
not to hide yourself, but to stand out, almost even to the point of divinity, to be a god almost, and not be a small human being caught completely in a self-effacing social role where nothing true can live. So it's really like this individualistic tone throughout the text.
I think it is deeply about finding, not to become quote unquote godlike, but to find this divine spirit in yourself and unite yourself with it and accept it as part of you and surrender yourself to spontaneity for your impulses and take your thoughts seriously. So
yeah, I wrote one note I had about it that's totally along this, is that it's not also about that in finding the divine that is inside of you, or the one that is inside you, that this makes you bigger than others, but in fact that if both of us found something inside of us that was really like the core, then the two of us would find the same thing.
Exactly.
So all individuals are this gateway into the one, or into the divine, or into whatever word we want to use to.
What most benefits a well-functioning society is the individual's completeness, the fulfillment of its individuals. If each of them are partial, then the whole is partial.
Okay, interesting. So that would be like a bottom-up approach to building a good society, right? Having trying to start with not perfect but whole individuals who are the basic unit in the society,
Yes.
like an individualistic approach.
It is the philosophy that is so popular these days, that
Yes.
to build yourself, to sort yourself out first as
Yeah.
other.
In that way, it's very American.
Also, so the individual, in the individualistic sense, and the American nature of the whole thing, the whole writing, is because it's written at the time when there was no separate American literature. It was Ralph Waldo Emerson who separated American literature from world literature as it is, because it was new. And what most, especially at the end, last part of the book, what he refers to is he's telling the Americans to create their own culture.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
to
Yes.
be individual in
Almost
that
the
sense.
role of actually, this is a digression, but what's the name of the guy who wrote Lord of the Rings?
Yeah,
Tolkien. He also had the same with Britain, that he wanted to write the mythology
Exactly.
that Britain did not have.
Yeah.
Britain did not have
It was more
Nordic
practical,
mythology or rich
yeah.
mythology, so
Yeah.
he wanted to give that to Britain in a way, in the
Yeah.
form of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. He made a more practical approach about
But
it.
so literally, or in the sense of literature, like you said, I actually didn't know that Ralph Waldo Emerson marks the dawn in a way of American
He does.
philosophy, American culture in terms of literature. So very nice. I do think that, just to stay with this individualistic thing, I mean, I think it's definitely something that can be critiqued. The stance that society has to be built on whole individuals, in the sense that I think a whole individual, a robust or a resilient individual, also requires a functional community. Like, it takes a tribe to build a man, or to build a well-functioning. There's a lot of, I read a very nice essay by a physiotherapist called Adam Meekins, where he talks about reliance and about how about resilience, and about how some of the science shows that those who are able to be strong individuals and overcome adversity, they had resources in their growing up, or have some kind of social setting that was strong. And I'm sure you can have many counterexamples to this, that the rose that grows from concrete, like Tupac, who had nothing, had no resources,
In that case,
and
he is the
still
exception.
blossoms. But I think the exception is the individual that comes from low resource homes
Exactly.
and grows into
Yeah.
maybe what this intellectual guy Emerson
I
is
think
describing as a whole human being.
I think we should ask.
Not to say that it cannot happen.
I think he urges part of the communities as individuals to make most of their individuality. So
Yeah.
either if you are a social worker or a chef or whatever, make the most of it, and make sure that is what your whole being is aligned with. Make sure that you do something that is you.
Yeah, I think, and in that sense, I mean, what I just said, I'm not trying to make an argument that is either or, because it's both. Because I cannot choose my background. I got the background I have, and each of us have traumas from our family or from our past, and what to do with that. And I think the zone of empowerment where each of us can actually improve or progress is a lot in the sense of what choices can I make with my life, what I have got as an individual. Because I cannot go back, rewind the clock, and get more resources from outside. And I think in that way, this essay is so inspiring to, like you're saying, from where you begin as an individual, like where you find yourself in life, use that to make the most of it and really go for it.
And accept that whatever you think, whatever you. Okay, let's go for it. Let's see.
Let's go for a quote.
Yeah.
Is that what you're doing now? Yeah. We have, both of us have underlined in this book a lot of quotes, so we'll see how many we get through here. Do you want me to read the whole thing, or
just up until given to him to till.
given for him to till.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. There is a time in every man's education when he arrives at the conviction that envy is ignorance, that imitation is suicide, that he must take himself for better or for worse as his portion, that though the wide universe is full of good, no kernel of nourishing corn can come to him but through his toil bestowed on that plot of ground which is given to him to till. So that was a kind of an agricultural metaphor there, and it's some advanced English, right? It's like that's a funky way of saying that only what you can harvest is what you plant on the land you have.
It is basically relying on your own resources, whatever they are. That's what it says.
Yeah.
And
whatever your resources are, yeah, exactly.
So you have to accept whatever you've been given by life and live according to that, or make the best of that. It's a basic truth, and if you
it definitely is.
If you refuse it, you become
philosophies have been right there, right?
And I think if you just it's common sense. If you just start to think, I cannot be like. If you don't think this way, you easily become resentful. You easily become somebody who just constantly incomplete.
A victim of your circumstances.
Exactly.
I think Søren Kierkegaard, the ethical person in Søren Kierkegaard's framework is a guy or a girl who has looked clearly at himself or herself and like seen the life for what it is with all its limitations, but then gone ahead and making a choice to choose oneself. This is who I am, and start from there. And that's like a similarity there, and I'm sure like also Stoicism and many other philosophies like really asks of you to take who you are, also forgive yourself that you are who you are. You have to accept it, each aspect of it, and then from there also frame it positively, that it's not like a cost or that you're a victim of it, but that now this is really yours and it's a gift that you
very strongly against victimhood.
Yes. So yeah, it doesn't say be a victim. The title, it says rely on yourself. Yeah, and if you read the essay, which I think both of us really recommend you do, you won't find any kind of pity on the will or the kind of the temptation to be a victim.
It's nature. It's cruel.
Yeah. I have another quote that is also, I really like this little saying: trust thyself, every heart vibrates to that iron string. And he also goes ahead, if we go back to the individual versus social, it seems like the antithesis to self-reliance in his world is conformity. You're not, if you want to rely on yourself, then it's only so far you can go to please your social surroundings before you start to lose yourself. And he definitely says like be strong in yourself before you go ahead and please other people. He does say at one point which really shows the time he wrote it in, like very traditional, like be a faithful husband to your wife. Don't let your friends down, like be loyal and so on. But once that is like, you take care of that as a basis, but then you have to still not be a conformist person who just conforms cluelessly to the pressures of the society. Speak the rude truth in all ways. Your goodness must have some edge to it, else
this
it is
one
none.
of my favorite quotes of the whole thing again.
Both of those, they're kind of separate sentences. But speak the rude truth. That's one of them, right? Yeah, like be you, do you. Don't like follow all the rules. It's like a couple, just 4 pages in. And for me, your goodness must have some edge to it, else it is none. For me, as a pleaser type personality, all my life I've been a pleaser, and reading that the first time, hit me in the fucking face. Like, yes, I'm gonna be a man the day that is something I do.
Don't forget to continue that the doctrine of hatred must be preached as the counteraction of the doctrine of love
Mm.
when that pulls and whines. Basically what it says, when your love becomes weak, it starts to complain, it starts to please, it starts to give your personality up.
Yeah. So the shadow side of love.
And
you're talking about,
exactly. And to contrast that, you have to integrate aggression and hatred,
Yes.
and all these has to be integrated. You have to deal with them. You have to.
How could you love another human being and really be fully capable of loving them if you have not looked into your own heart and seen the darkness there? Because if you naively think that you don't have the capacity to hurt others,
then you're very wrong.
Then you're first of all extremely wrong,
Yeah.
and second of all, it's going to also make your love a little bit fake, because you think you can offer something you cannot offer.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a risk to being loved by you.
Yeah.
Because each of us can hurt each other. Jordan Peterson really has this in his mythological kind of framework, where he's also talking about you gotta realize that you have evil inside you before you can become a whole human being that takes responsibility for yourself.
Disciplined aggression, what he says.
He counterposes those, discipline and aggression.
No, that you have to discipline your aggression.
You have to discipline,
That's what you do when you do martial arts, for example.
Yeah.
Discipline your aggression.
Yeah, and you have to, Nassim Taleb has a quote where he says you have to domesticate your emotions, which is kind of, it's a bit the same. Like domesticate sounds very negative, like really put your emotions. That's also very, like in the crowd I'm in, where it's a lot about being authentic and, showing your feelings, not hiding feelings, because feelings are not wrong. Then that can sound really like put yourself in a box kind of. But I think at the same time, to fully participate in many social settings, and to also take care of others, you have to make sure that you can own your feelings but not be controlled by them. And that makes sense for me, to domesticate your emotions, or like you said, to discipline your aggression, discipline your whimsical like tendency to just blurt things out that will hurt people or whatever.
And your wishes. I think it's discipline your desires, basically.
Because one of the themes, there's a couple quotes that talk to this aspect of discipline. A couple places he mentions duty, Emerson, the concept of duty. And I think many philosophies emphasize how you find freedom through discipline. You find freedom through duty and doing what you must, which is kind of, there's this weird, you can also find freedom in being authentic and doing what you want, but there's also a lot of freedom in doing what you must. So one quote from Emerson is, "What I must do is all that concerns me, not what the people think. You will always find those who think they know what is your duty better than you know it. It is easy in the world to live after the world's opinion. It is easy in solitude to live after our own. But the great man is he who in the midst of the crowd keeps with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude." I love this quote to kind of, it sums up both the polarity between being you yourself and being part of society. Because self-reliance doesn't mean you go live on an island like Robinson Crusoe and become
it is to confront
like that.
It is to confront society as an individual.
Yeah.
It is to not get swept by it, but to complement it with your own personality.
Yeah, exactly, and bring what is uniquely you into it to build society better, right? And not to become like an ant-hive where all the individuals are equal.
Same as Marcus Aurelius says, that it's what's good for the bee is good for the beehive, basically.
Yeah. Okay, so that's also a great image of why the individual comes first in a way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love this the solitude and duty aspect. It speaks to this. Like I went on a travel when I was 17, 18, where we were almost 2 months outside in the desert of Utah, and it was a small group of people, And during the time, there was vision quests, like inspired from Native American practices, where the group is kind of splintered into all of us, and we were between 5 and 8 people in the group. We would isolate ourselves physically, being away from each other so far we couldn't see or hear anybody, and we would camp for 24 hours and have silence, and even have, no, I did the final version of this was 3 days alone with no food, and that is my like deepest experience of solitude, being alone in the desert with my own camp, my own food, my own fire, and there to be with myself, and to, you know, your thoughts and your own inner movements become so big. It's like you're relating to yourself so clearly because there's nothing around you except for
your thoughts are shouting.
Thoughts are shouting. Yeah, you're much more clear to see who you are there. And then again, me being a pleaser, how can I bring that clear self-awareness and connectedness to my own kind of voice or who I am? How can I bring it back and look my father in the eyes and be me? Not be my father's son, but be me. Or how can I bring it back into my group of friends, being me, not being the same old Peter from before, right? And not letting that inertia or that habit take me into old patterns of being a pleaser or something else.
I don't think like being a pleaser is not necessarily a bad thing, you know. You have to search how you can help people. You have to be there for people. It's
a form of love, right?
It is a problem when it's against your will. Let's say if
it's fear based.
Yes, or just to please people, you put yourself in situations where you wouldn't go otherwise, and that's what makes you basically. It just makes you resentful because your body, your overall being is not a pleaser. It knows that you are pleasing people. It knows that you are off from your own course, and it's just gonna start to hit you back with feeling like shit, or feeling sorry for yourself, or feeling sorry for whatever.
I mean, that pretty accurately describes a large part of my life story, because
you're not alone.
It really does. Like, so being so I think one really clear theme from my like teenage years and childhood is that other people's needs
front of yours, always.
Oh yes, front of mine. And my own, I would go so far in this direction that I could not feel, almost couldn't experience my own needs when others' needs was present.
Yeah.
And what did that lead to? And you said resentfulness, and wow, yes, I spent 4 years almost with this alter ego, painting graffiti, stealing, like becoming part of this anarchistic kind of left-wing crowd, and that was great. That was really what my authentic self in a way needed, because I was so tired of this fundamental frustration of not having my own needs met, but all the time letting other people come to the front of the row.
Was that your own needs met though?
What?
Was that lifestyle met your needs?
Well, it was, no, because then that style, that motivation from this deep anger or resentfulness, that turned into a lot of self-destructive habits.
Exactly.
So that wasn't building me up. That would have, if I exaggerated that vector or that line of living, I would end with suicide.
Yeah.
I would literally end with suicide. Is where I was kind of going with shame.
Yes, I've been there. I've been there too. It's a loop.
Maybe you should. You told me the story of your depression.
Exactly. Yeah.
Does it make sense, this essay, in terms of your depression, or?
Yeah, man. Oh, it does.
Was it okay? So maybe you can.
Let me take a piss and
yeah.
Get there.
I'll pause it actually. We just came from we almost got into your depression, because I just talked a long time about being a pleaser and how I could really feel that clearly going from solitude to being together with people, and also that stuff about like if you don't put yourself first, in the sense that you need to take care of your own needs, in a clever, mature way,
Exactly.
then you're going to be resentful, and then you're going to maybe end like me and start doing crazy things to kind of vent your frustration.
Yeah. And close in as well. Yeah, what you just said, that if you're not being yourself, you're trying to compensate it somehow. And what he writes about this is, in your metaphysics you have a denied personality to the deity.
Okay, yeah, I see it.
So it basically says that you repress your godliness, you repress your intuitive self, basically, half of you, basically, or most of you, if you think about, as Jung thought about it, that your unconscious is obviously the much bigger part, so it's the biggest part, and your awareness is the small bit, which is us talking.
Yeah.
But so if you deny this, basically, let's call it personality, then it hits back. It snaps back.
For me, it's actually hard to understand. In your metaphysics, you have denied personality to the deity. So personality to the deity, that would be like, because in Buddhism, for example, the opposite is the case, where the ultimate principle is maybe emptiness, and you don't really think of Buddhism. Buddhism doesn't have a god that has a big, flagrant personality.
Continue that quote.
Yes, yet when the devout emotions of the soul come, yield to them heart and life, though they should clothe God with shape and color. Leave your theory as Joseph his coat in the hand of the harlot and flee.
That's exactly what you were getting to. That.
So shape and color, yeah, that's not emptiness. So he's talking about a God who is, or a principle, or something that is.
He talks about that it's your genuine actions what would clothe the world, and your conception of God with grandness and grandeur and colorfulness. And
that if you don't do that, then you're kind of, you will be grey and the world will be grey.
Not necessarily, actually. Yeah, the second sentence, the end of this is for to leave your theory as Joseph his coat in the hand of the harlot, is more like.
Joseph
is more like a you know Joseph from the Bible.
Yeah.
He had the
beautiful
cloak. Yeah.
Yeah. Very expensive.
Yeah, the cloth of many colors. So basically, leave your precious theories behind and act from yourself. So your actions and your genuine, honest thought will give color to the world.
Yes. Okay, so I can relate that to that there's a guy who talks about the concepts of power versus strength.
Mm.
And where power is coming from the past, what you have done before.
Mm.
And so in a sense, Joseph, with his expensive clothes, the cloak of many colors, or a coat of many colors, he has this symbol, or these old things that he's bringing with him from his past. And that can maybe be some kind of, that's a social role, that is power. But what Emerson is asking Joseph and us to do is to throw away the symbols and the power of the past, and to become strong, where strong is the ability to act in the present without being kind of hooked or dependent on what you did before.
I take it as a exercise and experience. So let's say I sit here, I don't feel color, meaning that I feel gray. I feel like I'm like I can't put any meaning to whatever is around me. I feel like that the water doesn't have a taste, the coffee is too strong, the letters are a mess, you know. I start to feel let's say gray. Like without things start to lose their meaning.
Yeah, I was about to say, it sounded meaningless.
Right? And exactly, and if you create your own meaning from your own experience, that means that you can change your attitude in a way that it gives color to everything. So I start to look at the water is like, oh fuck, it's like so good, this water is cold and I'm actually thirsty. it's like yeah, this coffee is a bit too much, so I just keep drinking more water, and you know
Yeah.
it's like you know it's
But it may be more.
it's attitude
Yeah.
in my opinion.
But maybe
Maybe
it makes
I'm-
more sense with actually even more kind of or less trivial actions, because for example it could be more this thing that you should, when the motions of the soul come, yield to them heart and life. I relate it to like, you might be in company, we might be talking together, but we're kind of just gray in our talk, like small talking about these superficial things about each other. But what I really want, or what I really have inside me, is maybe a stronger voice that wants to really tell you something. I want to actually express myself
Right.
and give color and enthusiasm to my voice that I want to share with you. And that could be like, because I'm sure everybody can relate to having a gray conversation. It's like nobody's really committed to it or engaged, and nobody's really authentic. And so try not to do that, but to maybe listen more clearly to what is actually inside right now. See if that can
Try to
find a way
express
out.
that, yeah.
Try to express it, try and let it come at, yield to that voice.
Exactly.
Because we just put it in,
Yeah.
like a lot of the grayness comes from ourselves, right? It comes from habit, internalized, kind of our internalized way of being from society. Like I'm struggling for the word, like how parents raise us. Like the pressures from outside, they come inside. Anyway. But that's quite an advanced quote, I would say.
Yeah, there's money in here.
I like the you started with the self, like consistency, the theme of being authentic, and that is kind of really a good place to go, becoming more authentic. That goes along with allowing yourself to be inconsistent. I like that theme because it kind of frees us up from the past. Like we've been talking about, like you're used to saying X again and again. You're used to telling the same story about yourself again and again.
It's like you're not who you were when you were 7 years old. Like, what's the point to attach yourself to your own mistake, like your older mistakes, like or your like glorified like triumphs in a way, like
or kind of just habits and stories that are the same in time, but you don't have to keep those habits, and you don't have to tell the same story about yourself.
Yeah, it's a choice.
And I mean, it's inspiring to be asked to surprise the world with your actions, instead of thinking that you have to keep living up to what is coming from outside, the projections people have of you. Then dare to confuse everybody, and maybe alienate them a little bit by saying something completely new.
Yeah.
So that giving space.
I do that a lot.
You do that a lot.
Yeah, people freak out a lot.
Do you have an example of that, or?
Let me think. I think every time when people kind of freak out about you as a person, let's say many times, because being yourself in this way, as he suggests, is not a fun thing, and he writes it as well, that if you actually follow these steps, if you actually follow which I actually did, if you actually follow on of this practicing like rigid self-reliance, then first of all, it's not fun. Second of all, it's very, very, very satisfying, but you wouldn't call it fun. Second,
or comfortable.
or comfortable, which is again comfort, different theme. But people will think you are nuts. People will think as soon as you stop doing what common people do. It has obviously different levels.
Yeah. And just to give two quotes and then keep talking exactly about that.
Go for it.
Speak the rude truth in all ways, and later, and have an edge to your goodness, and later on, here's another one. Let us never bow and apologize more. So never apologize, speak the rude truth, have edge to your goodness. So these are all ways where you can kind of, like, speaking to what you were just saying, these are examples of different tenets that Emerson is asking of us, and doing that will not leave us in a comfortable position among our peers or in our family, right?
Exactly,
Speak the real truth. That's not gonna be like
you have
the hygge
right.
Get together with your friends or your family, right? It's gonna be more than that. It's gonna be.
I firmly believe that it doesn't matter if it's your parents, your girlfriend, whoever. You have to be like, truth is truth, and virtue is virtue, and you choose your surroundings depending on your own perception of these virtues, I'll say. And
live no longer to the expectation of these deceived and deceiving people with whom we converse.
Right there, it's like,
and that's quite judgeful, like calling people deceiving.
You need to be,
and
yes,
ourselves. I'm also when I'm too much a
hardcore.
pleaser, I'm also deceiving others. I'm being a fake, you know.
Exactly.
Because I not that I don't love people, but if I love them to the extent that I'm kind of not taking care of myself,
exactly.
right? Then I am deceiving and like live no longer to the expectation.
I think to this quote is, I will not hide my taste or aversions, I will so trust that is deep, is holy, that I will do strongly before the sun and moon, whatever ill rejoices me, and the heart appoints. It's the
Super
same
great
thing.
quote. I've also underlined that one.
Same thing.
I will not hide my tastes and aversions. I really like that too.
Yeah.
Like, say what you like.
Yeah.
Others can say what they like.
Yeah. Also, he points out that this is a hard thing to do, as he says that, and truly it demands something godlike in he who has cast off the common motives of humanity and has ventured to trust himself for a task maker. Basically, it demands a great moral effort to basically dress off everything, what your culture, what your parents, what your world, what your surroundings builded you up to, and have the courage to figure it out for yourself. And just as he says that you cannot accept other people's concept of good or bad, but you have to find it yourself. You have to figure out through experience what is good and what is bad. And it's also here that good and bad depends on what is with or against my constitution. So, where is it? Have you read that quote?
Well, I mean, there's a quote by Shakespeare. I don't know the full quote, but it says like, there's nothing in and of itself that's good and bad, but thinking makes it so. So in the way good and bad is linked to the perceiver of the situation, right? It's not gonna be the same for everybody.
I think this one is
and it's based on experience.
Nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind.
Right in the beginning. Of the text.
These are basically circles in towards the fact that trust thyself, like figure it out. Break the code of your own being and align yourself with it. It's okay. I really want to talk about the metaphysics of it, because I think the next there's like a huge part in this which has nothing to do with the practical part, but it gets into the description of intuition itself.
Is it in the part where it's about like perception and how your perception in the moment is as much a fact as the sun, for example? It's like that you have to
it
trust.
Was so fucking hard to translate, man. I think this part was the hardest. It's
metaphysics. What does Emerson say about metaphysics of intuition?
All right. So basically, it's fascinating how he starts to explain the origin of intuition. So it's complete bro science if you ask me. So he
Bro science.
yeah.
So
I mean
kind of,
it's not based on science. He basically talks as a monk of his own religion, let's say, or he does what he preaches basically. That he goes down and tells us about his own stance on. Basically, he questions who is the trustee, who is the self, who we should trust.
And these and there's a long kind of sentence which ends with like, what is the nature of that thing where you feel it's independent, or what, like whenever the self seems to be this thing of its own, then what is that?
Exactly.
And
he digs down.
Yeah, which makes sense. Is like also a question of definition. If you want to rely on the self, what is the self to rely on?
Exactly. So the inquiry leads us to the source, at once the essence of genius, of virtue, and of life, which we call spontaneity or instinct. So basically, he digs down to the sources of intuition. The last fact behind which analysis cannot go. Analysis.
I think analysis. I always had a hard time saying that analysis, because I also say analysis. That's how you'd say it in Danish. Analyse.
I think that's the right pronunciation, man.
Analysis. It's kind of weird. Analysis.
And again, here's the fountain of action and of thought. Here are the lungs of that inspiration of which giveth man wisdom and which cannot be denied without impiety or atheism. So here he suggests that you need a belief in quote-unquote God to believe this, to accept that this is a source from the unknown. This is something that hits through. This is a light that hits through from the known, basically.
And Emerson is not an atheist.
He is far from it. he was actually like his father was a priest, if I know it right. Or the leader of the church in Boston, wherever he was from. Concord, that's where he's from.
Concord,
So he has this title, the Sage of Concord.
Sage of Concord.
Yeah, so
that should go in the intro, the Sage of Concord.
So he's far from being an atheist. He pushes his readers to believe. To have a
and not only believe and have like a distance relationship to God, but to let God and the godly or the divine breathe into your actions, like to be almost like a flute for God to play on, like to use a Rumi metaphor. Or
I'm very I really like, if I believe in something, is that you should not make things divine themselves, but bring the divine down to the perceptual, to the everydays, because that is what it is about.
Into your own actions.
Exactly. And into your perception, into whatever. Like all the religious books and religious texts and mythology as well, they talk about the everydays. What else they will talk about? Like there is nobody, like they are all symbols. They are all expressions of this.
Yeah, but at the same time, very many cultures, including like I think many tribal cultures and Catholicism, there the priest or the shaman is the gateway to God.
Exactly.
Whereas Emerson is much more of the Protestant kind of tradition, where the Protestants was protesting that they had to pay a lot of money and that they couldn't read the Latin. It was all shit basically. The church was super annoying and expensive to be part of. And they're saying, now we're done with this, we want to have our own relationship to God. Each person can read the scripture, each person can pray directly to God. Each person can somehow eventually have a direct relationship to God. So in that way I would say Emerson is directly a Protestant thinker in terms of his theism. Not that he's a regular old kind of average Protestant, but that's just one key element of emphasizing that none of us need this
Not
actually
an
is the last
external
point
thing.
I have actually about this thing is we don't need a priest to get to God. We
Exactly.
just have our own
He
temple
even
of
writes
action
this.
and body.
The relations of the soul to the divine spirit are so pure that it is profane to seek to interpose helps.
Yeah, that would
That's exactly
be
what you said.
exactly the thing. There's no interposing
Yeah.
help or
Nothing
assistant
between.
to help you get to God. You're gonna do it yourself.
No, you are yourself. So there's nothing between.
Yeah, and God is in you already.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's there's no line between you and God or whatever. It's here already. It's right now. It's in every second. It's life.
But that we can forget the fact and live in an inauthentic way and not rely on that part of ourselves. We can rely on our small self and become victims. But what he's asking is to tune into that divine essence that is inside of you. That makes a lot of sense. And to that point, he even talks about how that essence inside of us spread into our actions.
Mm-hmm.
But another level that he goes into is that virtue is not only in the things we do. So he goes into a lot of criticism of altruism. He doesn't want you to prove that you are a good person by giving alms to poor people, for example. He doesn't want you to kind of just play he doesn't want you to look good by these superficial actions. Yeah. He wants you to really be good and realize your own goodness. So I wrote it in my notebook, like, it's not virtue in doing, it's virtue in your very being. And there's a quote here for that. I ask primary evidence that you are a man,
I love this one,
or a woman, I would say, and refuse this appeal from the man to his actions. Few and mean as my gifts may be, I actually am, and I do not need secondary testimony. And that's also very strong, because that even we've talked a lot about how this is applicable to our actions, but this is it's a bit different in a way, because now it's not that I should push my actions out in front of me and say, look, I'm so good, I did this and this and this. It's more like I really have to rest in that I also am.
It is you do it because your constitution demands it. You don't do it to show off, for example. You don't do it
and to play the status game.
Exactly. Yeah. It's you like it's like competency, like you get forward in life as more competent, you become in something that cannot be faked, that cannot be like made up.
Competency cannot be faked.
It can't. You can even do something or not, and how well you do something, that's justified by the result of your action,
and everybody can see it.
And it's there. So people look into stories, look into explanations, look into, I don't know, Christianity, Buddha, religion, everywhere. They look everywhere, but in themselves for this divinity. And
there's looking outside of yourself is a mistake.
Again, if you
he also criticizes a lot the kind of the way of being religious, where you read the religious texts as if the truth is over there.
Exactly.
All the religious texts are pointing back to you.
Exactly.
So look at yourself also.
Exactly. It's written for you, about you. It's not about somebody else. And that's all you have to do is just fucking act it out.
And that you can deceive yourself in being religious because you read the texts. You go to church, you play the games,
that's not the way.
But that's not the game at all, because those are outward appearances where you might not take the deep step of letting the religious text or the ceremony actually transform who you are and how you act in the world.
And this exactly leads us to the quote where, when God is near you, when you have life in yourself, it is not by any known or accustomed way. You shall not discern the footprints of any other, you shall not see face of man, you shall not hear any name. The way that the thought, the good, shall be wholly strange and new. So basically, when you are
So great.
when you are on your path, that's how it feels. That's it.
Yeah, it will not be known. It's a stepping into something unknown.
Exactly. It's a trip.
Yeah.
It shall exclude example and experience. It's new. It's novel.
Yeah, and it means also you cannot look to other people that walked before you. There's also this other quote like, don't look to the wise man. Look after what the wise man sought himself or herself.
There won't be another Shakespeare by studying Shakespeare. He was a unique personality, and by studying
he also asked, who did Shakespeare study to become Shakespeare?
Exactly.
He didn't study. He studied things. Of course, he was a literary guy.
Yeah.
But who could teach great Shakespeare? Shakespeare created modern literature, right?
Yeah.
He is God of literature, and who would have taught him? Nobody can teach him. Everybody learns Shakespeare, but what could Shakespeare learn from us? He went being at the top of the rung, and it's because of original action.
No, I think you put it right. Not that he had nothing to learn from us, but that he became Shakespeare by studying Dante, for example.
Yeah, and
imitated Dante. Sorry, exactly. So he probably studied Dante. I don't know which was first, but he kept his originality basically.
Yeah. And how can we be original if we imitate? There was that initial quote mentioned about like there comes a time in every man's education where he has to realize that envy is ignorance, that imitation is suicide.
Exactly.
And there's another place where he talks about imitation, and he's not positive about being an imitationist. Like if you imitate, you die. Basically, so the spiritual life or the authentic life where you rely on yourself is a life where you do not seek to imitate anybody, but go forth without example, without anybody guiding you, basically also without having a father holding you in the hand, showing you the ropes. You have to make your own way in that
spirit
regard.
of the father, basically. Like you have to attain that spirit, what your father represents to you, and that will have like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader and all that jazz.
Yeah. It's such a great essay. Like.
Yeah, it's so rich.
The language of it is so old, and and to the complex side, it's hard English, but a lot of the ideas, they have so much energy, and can easily be kind of related to now.
Takes you away. Yeah.
And you have definitely a feeling that Emerson is writing directly to the reader in a very intense way. It's not like
he writes to the soul, not for his age. He writes to the what's.
This is not a university lecture. No. It's like it's him, standing in full inspiration, almost in a state of prayer, talking to his own soul, but also to my soul. It's like he's talking the soul language.
It talks to what is common between us, basically.
Yeah.
And back to the theme where you have to be, let's say, distinguish yourself from your mentors and from who you learn from. Mm-hmm. There is this part when he says,
the pupil takes the same delight in subordinating everything to the new terminology as a girl who has just learned botany in seeing a new earth and new seasons thereby. It will happen for a time that the pupil will find his intellectual power has grown by the study of his master's mind, but in all unbalanced minds the classification is idolized, passes for the end and not for a speedily exhaustible means, so that the walls of the system blend to their eye in the remote horizon with the walls of the universe. The luminaries of heaven seem to them hung on the arch their master built.
Yeah, they cannot imagine how you aliens have any right to see, how you can see. It must be somehow that you stole that light from us. The point is that he sees his own powers growing while, like, he doesn't see through his master. Man, yeah. But
actually, the last part of the quote is even more clear, because it gives this image that we just talked about, like you find this new satisfaction in a system, and your masters thought framework, and then you go for that, and he kind of compares that to being inside a small cabin, and that the real light of the like true understanding that is not just your master's understanding but your own is going to break through like light shining in through the cabin.
Yeah, exactly.
That light, unsystematic, indomitable, will break into any cabin, even into theirs. Let them chirp a while and call it their own. If they are honest and do well, presently their new pinfold will be too straight and low, will crack, will lean, will rot and vanish, and the immortal light, all young and joyful, million-orbed, million-colored, will beam over the universe as on the first morning.
So badass.
That's pretty beautiful writing about like really that direct perception and not going for these smaller systems that you like, really direct perception.
You become your own master, basically. You
or being the one that really is themselves perceiving the divine or the bigger system.
Not in other person's ideal, but in their own.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite Nietzsche quotes is, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded."
Wow, yeah. So back to the duty and the
he who cannot obey himself will be commanded. Basically, obey himself. Yeah, we didn't even get to the structure of it, because actually writes down how self-reliance as a practice can have society.
Yeah, in the domain of how to pray.
Yes.
And how to travel or not to travel.
Yeah.
And how to and then he goes deeper, like the traveling of the mind, and then religion, education, art, and we look abroad.
That's exactly.
And then he talks about society.
Yeah, that's exactly when he urges the Americans to create their own culture.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That last part about where he talks, that makes sense. But I think, like, I think this conversation shows that we didn't even get to these 5 points towards the end. Most of our quotes have come from before that, so there is a lot to be covered just in those like bullet points that are the last 6-8 pages. And I definitely don't think we have time to go through them now.
Yeah, I slept 4 hours, so I'm fucking everywhere.
Yeah,
my attention jumps and goes, and where can barely fucking read. So.
But you don't read it badly. Like sometimes you miss words, but it's I think it's also just to
my state.
Yeah.
It's like I took some drug that takes away your.
Well, not sleeping is a powerful drug.
It is, man.
Cause I'm even like the part about traveling. I just get super inspired from that.
I don't. To me, it was a little bit over the edge, because what he says is that if you travel to find something that you yourself don't possess, then you're doing it wrong, because as he says, travel is the idiot's paradise, or what is the holiday is the idiot's paradise?
Traveling is a fool's paradise.
Fool's paradise, man. It's like it's a. I wouldn't say traveling. Maybe by traveling he meant holidays. When you, let's say, go to Mallorca and go guns blazing and just having fun. Whatever fun means. I think he means that like basically you're searching for fulfillment in an environment where you take all your problems with you want it or not. Unconsciously or not.
He talks about the indifference of places, and like if no matter where you are, you're going to be with your own self.
Yeah.
My giant goes with me wherever I go.
Yeah. Also, there's a few things about the creation of this essay that, first of all, the person who is just as big as Ralph Waldo Emerson, and who both Ralph Waldo Emerson and Montaigne read before they wrote their own essays, was Seneca the Younger. Because
should we? Oh well, we're recording. Go for it. Tell it. Introduce it like it's.
I think it's because Seneca was the essay as a form. I think is is started off with Seneca, with the moral letters of Seneca.
Yeah.
And
later Montaigne's essays.
And then Montaigne was studying those letters when he wrote his own essays, his own way, and Emerson studied them both when he wrote these. And I think the point, the fact that essays as things are exist is they're doing.
So the genre of essay is also due to Emerson. Of course, he builds on the shoulder of some giants, but
wow, look at that book, man! Look at this. Like look at the size of it. It is only essays. All Emerson wrote is essays.
Yeah.
He and also one other thing that is important to mention, that these essays are not just to read, but these were lectures. Sorry.
Yeah.
So he stood up to a podium and basically lectured these as a quote unquote priest, and he basically gave self-help talks. He basically, what he did was he gave how do you call this, Tony Robbins and
motivational speaker.
He was basically a motivational speaker for the 1800s for the Americans. That's what he did.
Okay, yeah.
He has the nature, he has the circles, he has the character, he has the history.
Yeah.
He has actually one on Montaigne, just as Montaigne has one on Seneca. It's continuous, and it's self-help for harder times.
Yeah.
It's self-help for the times when you actually let's say when life was harsher, when life was more demanding.
And his father was a priest, and he definitely has that kind of sermonizing quality.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really, he
was a goofy guy. If you look at that he lost his first wife very young, when he was in his 20s, early 20s I think, and like love of his life. And then he went into a very deep dark place for a long time, I think, where these essays originate from mostly, or where he kind of got into this, what he transformed to what beauty we have in these writings.
Yeah.
And eventually he remarried, and his second wife suggested that their daughter be called on the name of his first wife. And the freaky part is that I don't know how true this story is, that he actually went back after years to his dead wife's grave, and he opened it up to just to take a look, just to just to take it in. So you kind of know what kind of person we're talking about here. Like he's truth before again, just like his pupil, let's say, Pharaoh. He was facts before anything. All his
looking directly at the truth.
Let it be feeling or emotions, or life itself.
Yeah.
Take what you see and do what you can with it, basically.
Yeah.
Super fascinating stuff.
That's a great insight into who he was. I don't know so much about his character. So those
I would love to
stories.
sit down with the man.
Yeah.
Though I will not understand shit about what he's saying.
Which person, dead or alive, would you like to have dinner with?
Well,
Emerson.
Emerson, definitely, man. Though I think I'll be intellectually.
Well, imagine if he could speak Hungarian.
Yeah, I mean, still, intellectuality is a language that I like. He works with this so, like, his thoughts are so high that I'm not sure if I could keep up the pace. Though I will sit and fucking take it all in.
Yeah.
Because he's something else, man.
Yeah, he really is. Yeah, I feel like we're coming up on the time limit.
Yeah.
So,
That's just.
And I don't know how to finish it. It's not like we have to summarize.
I think
that would be impossible.
I think talking about this character was quite good. Or we can maybe.
Yeah, I think so too.
Maybe finish it as he finishes it.
By reading the last.
Where nothing can bring you peace but yourself. Nothing can bring you peace but the triumph of your principles. Basically, what this is to live your life by your own example. It doesn't need explain more. It like
yeah, and don't worry about what is like the weather is changing in your life. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but don't believe that. You don't trust when it feels good outside. The only thing you can ever trust is the power you have inside.
Yeah.
Even if things are going good, but especially also when things are going bad.
Yeah.
So that was a long rant about Emerson. Yeah, and I don't know who's gonna say thanks to who, because I'm gonna say thanks to Berlin for coming in, the guy who translated this essay to Hungarian. But you might have to thank me, because it's also gonna be your podcast.
I don't know.
So that was a long rant about Emerson. So that was a long rant about Emerson.